Good evening. Good evening. Welcome everyone. Today we are learning Parashat Vayishlach. We're using Art Scroll Chumash and we're on page 171. Last week, Yaakov ran away from Lavan with his whole family, 11 boys and one girl, 4 wives, and Lavan chased after him. Hashem came to Lavan in a dream and warned him not to speak to Yaakov, not good and not bad, not to hurt Yaakov. So they made a peace treaty, Lavan and Yaakov, and Lavan went home. So as he continued going to his parents' house, Yaakov met a camp of angels. And he called that place Mahanaim. Mahane means a camp. Mahanaim means 2 camps. One, the camp of the angels, and the second, the camp of Yaakov and his family. Now, in this week's parsha, on page 171, Yaakov uses the opportunity to send these same angels that he met to Esav. Yaakov now reaches such a high level, not only he sees the angels live during the day, he actually has control over them. He sends these angels ahead of him to Esav, his brother, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, you should tell to him like this. So said your servant Yaakov. This is the message that Yaakov wants these angels to give to Esav. So said your servant Yaakov. I have sojourned, which means lived temporarily, with Lavan, and I have lingered until now. Now, Yaakov uses the word im Lavan, garti. Garti means temporary resident. Not a permanent resident means Yaakov's telling Esav, I did not become a great wealthy personality over the last 20 years. Rather, I'm still a temporary resident. He's telling Esav, don't be jealous of the blessing that I got from my father. That blessing didn't work. Don't worry about it. Because my father told me I'm going to be in possession of a lot of land, and I don't have any land. I was a temporary resident. I did not acquire any land. All I have is this sheep, flocks, some slaves, but no land. And in verse 6, he says exactly that. I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, servants, maidservants, but no land. The blessing was not fulfilled. And I'm sending to tell my Lord to find favor in your eyes. So Yaakov is testing the ground. He's sending the angels. He's giving Esav a nice message. Esav, you are my master. I'm respecting you. I'm informing you that I'm coming. I'm coming not as a boss, but rather as your servant. Yaakov is hoping that Esav will be bribed by these words, because that's what Esav wants. Esav wants honor, and Yaakov is giving him honor. But in verse 7, the angels returned to Yaakov, saying, we came to your brother, to Esav. Moreover, he is heading toward you, and 400 men are with him. So The angels told Yaakov, you think that he is your brother, but he is Esav. He is still that same wicked Esav, your enemy. And not only that, he's not only waiting patiently until you come and then he will kill you. No, he is preparing for war, and he assembled an army of 400 soldiers. Now we turn to page 173. Yaakov became very frightened. That's a very heavy message. I am trying to apologize. I am trying to appease him. I am trying to make him my friend, and he's answering me with declaration of war. Yaakov became very frightened, and it distressed him. Now our sages say, why double his expression? He became frightened and it distressed him. So he became frightened that he might be killed, and his wives and children, chas v'shalom, and it distressed him that he might kill Esav and his soldiers. Yaakov doesn't want a war. He doesn't want to fight. Even if he wins, he would rather not to have a war. In this regard, Jewish people are unique. Whereas Esav received the blessing, Al harbicha tichyeh, you will live by your sword, which means not only you will survive by your sword, but also you will live by your sword. The only life worth living for you is if you can fight. That is what those nations that came from Esav, that's their lifeblood. That's what makes them excited. That's what makes them feel alive. When I can fight, when I can kill, and when I have a risk of losing my life, that's life. Yaakov says, no, I don't want to kill and I don't want to be killed. That's not fun for me. What's fun for me, the sages say, Yaakov ishtam yoshev ohalim. Yaakov just wants to sit and learn and meditate and pray. That's what's exciting for him. Jewish people get excited over a piece of Gemara, over a class in Chumash. That's what we get excited over. We get excited when we can have a delicious prayer where we connect to Hashem. That's what makes us happy. It's not the competition. It's not the fighting. It's not showing your muscles. That's all, as they say, hevel havalim. That is vanity. That is shtusim. That is worthless. What interests us is eternity. And Yaakov says, here I am, building my family. I already have 4 wives, 12 children, 11 boys, 1 girl. And I want to continue. I want to visit my father and pay respect to him. And my mother, she is still alive at this point. I don't want to fight. Just leave me alone. And Esav is coming with 400 men, and Yaakov knows if war breaks out, somebody's going to get killed. And he's not interested. So Yaakov has to do something. And he is doing 3 things. Number 1, he is preparing for war. Number 2, he's trying to avoid war by bribing Esav with gifts. And number 3, Yaakov will pray. So he divided the people with him and the flocks, cattle, and camels into 2 camps. That's the preparation for war. He is planning the strategy. He is planning 2 war camps. For he said, if Esav comes to the one camp and strikes it down, then the remaining camp shall survive. A question is being asked, what's the guarantee that if you split your camp in half, that the second camp will survive? On one hand, you might argue that if you keep everyone together, that's how you make sure that you win the war. The more people you have attacking the enemy, the stronger you are. What is Yaakov doing, splitting his camp in half. They're going to be half weaker. And not only that, Yaakov is saying, if Esav kills one camp, the second camp will survive. How do you know that the second camp will survive? Maybe Esav will come to the battle, kill one camp, and then come to a second battle and kill the second camp. You are making each camp weaker. And here our sages give us a secret. And that is that Yaakov knew, he had a prophecy from his mother. His mother told him, why should I lose both of you on the same day? When his mother told him to run away, his mother told him that I have a prophecy that if one of you dies, the second one will die on the same day. So we see that at the end, that's what happened. On the day that Yaakov was buried, that same day Esav was killed and was buried also. So Yaakov knew this secret, that he and Esav will be buried, which means they will die on the same day. So he said, I can trick Esav. He will not be able to kill all my children. I will put these two camps one day apart. He will come to the first camp. We're going to fight. If he kills the first camp, the second camp will be a day away. Esav will run, trying to get to the second camp. Before he gets to it, 24 hours will pass and he will drop dead. Something will happen that Esav will not be able to survive. This will guarantee that the second camp will remain intact. We are on verse 10, and Yaakov said, now this is the prayer. God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Yitzhak, Hashem, who said to me, return to your land and to your relatives, and I will do good to you. Yaakov says, Hashem, you yourself said that I should leave Lavan and I should go to my father and everything will be good. What's going on? Why am I facing a battle with my own brother? I have been diminished by all the kindnesses and by all the truth that you have done your servant. Yaakov is now giving us another powerful lesson. When you ask Hashem for something, you have to say thank you. You have to acknowledge everything that Hashem did for you. Because if you just ask for more and more, Hashem's going to say, I gave you already so much. Did you notice it? Did you appreciate it? And if you only say, give me, there will come a time when Hashem says, I want to first hear a thank you. Because I'm giving you in order to develop a relationship. Hashem created the entire world in order to have a relationship with his creation. And we, as his best creation, human beings, he's hoping that we will turn back to him and say, Hashem, we recognize that you are our creator and we are your creations. And we realize and we depend fully on you. Please give us everything we need. That's what Hashem wants. He is willing to provide us with everything. Hashem is willing to give us more than we need. But he wants us to acknowledge where it's coming from. And that's exactly what Yaakov is doing. First he says, Hashem, you told me what to do and I'm doing it. You told me leave Lavan, go to Yitzchak your father, and I'm doing it. And before I ask for anything, I want to acknowledge what you did for me so far. Hashem, I've been diminished by all the kindness and by all the truth that you have done for your servant. Which means you have done for me so much that I'm afraid I will never be able to pay back. And I'm afraid all my merit has been used up. I recognize how much good and truth you have done for me. Now that Yaakov thanked Hashem, and now that Yaakov acknowledged all the good that Hashem did, Yaakov continues, and he says, with my staff I crossed Jordan, which means I did not have any possessions. I was poor. All I had was my walking stick. And now I have become 2 camps. I have become so great that I can divide my people into 2 camps, and they're going to be a powerful force to fight Esav. And I have 2 of them. On the other hand, this is his request. Hashem, you told me to go to my father, and I listened. You gave me a blessing, my wives and my children. However, right now I became 2 camps. Why did I become 2 camps? Because I'm facing mortal danger. I'm forced to divide my family in half, hoping that one of them will survive. And now his request starts. Verse 12, rescue me, please, from the hand of my brother. Why should brothers fight? From the hand of Esav, for I fear him, lest he come and strike me down, mother and children. The non-Jews, when they hate the Jews and they do pogrom and Holocaust, they don't differentiate whether it's me, a man, whether it's mother or children. And that is why Yaakov is saying, please save me from my brother and from Esav. I will just say that we have to ask Hashem to protect us from 2 enemies. One enemy is in the disguise of our brother, and one enemy is openly our enemy. Who is the enemy that's our brother? That's the time when the nations of the world are favorable to the Jews and they welcome us and they say, come, join us, melting pot. Let us marry each other. Welcome to our universities. We will give you highest positions in all the political offices of the land. We will give you highest positions in our businesses and our enterprises. You can be CEO, CFO, and COO, and all the other O's that you can imagine. You're going to be everything. And we might fall for it. They are acting like our brothers. We love you. We want to join you. You're such a great nation. We admire you. Please marry me. That's the danger of living in a country where they treat us nicely, like Spain in its early times, like the United States currently, and like European countries before the World War II. It was good for the Jewish people. And because of that, they failed. They failed to recognize that when the nations of the world, when the Esav of the world is treating us like their brother, it is dangerous. Because we are only successful when, as Bilam said, they are unique. They are separate. Even Bilam, who wanted to curse us, he recognized that the Jewish people are beautiful when they are alone. Goyim lo yitchashav. They're not counted among the other nations. But when we mixed together with other nations, then we're not unique, then we're not special, and we stop being beautiful, we stop being beloved by God. And the second danger is openly visible. That's when they come to us and they say, you are a Jew, you are the worst, you are thieves, and all the bad things. In Russia, they called us capitalist. In America, they called us communist and enemy of the people. We got it all. And Yaakov is asking Hashem, please protect me from my brother, from the loving hands of the nations, and protect me from my enemy, Esav. And you had said, Hashem, you promised me, I will surely do good with you, and I will make your offspring like the sand of the sea, which is too numerous to count. That's Yaakov's prayer. Now, something strange he does in the next verse, verse 14. He spent the night there, and he took from that which had come in his hand a tribute to Esav, his brother. That's a good question. Why Yaakov was scared of Esav? And one of the reasons he was scared of Esav was because Esav had a merit that Yaakov didn't have. For the last 20 years, Esav was close to his father and he was honoring his father. He had the merit of Kibud Avim, the greatest mitzvah, honoring your parents. And Yaakov was righteous, but he was missing that one mitzvah. The second reason why he was afraid of Esav was because when somebody is upset at us, that is dangerous. When somebody is crying because of us, even if we didn't do anything wrong, but somebody is crying, that is very dangerous. As it says, the gates of tears are never closed. Hashem listens to the prayers of the one that cries. And Esav cried bitter tears. And Yaakov knows that since Esav is upset at him and Esav cried, it is possible that the strict justice of Hashem will decide that Esav suffered enough. He cried and cried for already 20 years. Maybe his suffering came to an end. And perhaps that will help him to win against me. Because even though I was forced into it, I didn't want to steal the blessing. I was the cause of his crying. Imagine how much we have to be scared if we cause someone to cry. How much a spouse need to be worried not to hurt their spouse. I'm not sure what you mean by your second question, that the 400 men had the good intentions. Right now, it looks like Esav is coming to make war. Otherwise, you don't go armed with 400 men with clubs and bows and arrows and swords to greet your brother that you haven't seen in 20 years. So right now, everything looks like a war is coming. So Yaakov is now by the third step of his preparations to meet Esav, and that is the bribe, the gift, a tribute to Esav, his brother. And now the Torah lists how many animals he sent to his brother. 200 female goats and 20 male goats. 200 female sheep and 20 male sheep. 30 camels, female camels, and their babies, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 donkeys and 10 male donkeys. So altogether, it was over 600 animals. Imagine how rich Yaakov was. He sent Esav just small part of his possessions, over 600. According to some, it's 610 animals. According to some, it's 640 animals. Now we turn to page 175. And by the way, from these numbers, the Torah doesn't just give us numbers without a reason. The Torah can say he gave him donkeys, camels, cows, and sheep and goats, and altogether he sent 600 animals. Why does it say this amount of males, this amount of females, this amount of babies, this amount of mothers? To teach us how to take care of animals, and more importantly, it teaches us the relationship between the males and females, and it teaches us the mitzvah, the obligation that the husband has to satisfy his wife. From the amount of males and females, we see the obligation that the husband has to fulfill his wife's desires. We're on page 175. He made sure that he sent this not as one 600 animal group, but rather he divided into many small groups. Doesn't say how many, but let's say 10 groups. Each one about 60 animals. Maybe more, maybe less groups. And he said to each one, travel ahead. Then after an hour or two, another group starts traveling, another hour, another group. This way, Esav receives a gift, 60 animals. And he has a conversation. Who is this from? Oh, it's from your Yaakov, from your brother Yaakov. He loves you. He can't wait to see you. He misses you. He's your servant. Okay, fine. And then an hour later, another delegation, another 60 animals. Where are you coming from? From Yaakov, your brother. He loves you. He misses you. He's your servant. He can't wait to see you. And like this 10 times, and slowly Yaakov is breaking Esav's shield, Esav's defense. He's breaking his harsh nature. He's softening him slowly, slowly. And that's another great lesson. If you want to influence somebody, don't do it with one blow. Don't fight him head on and say, I want you to do this. You have to agree now. Admit. Obey me. Then you're not going to get anything. Do by little hints. If a wife wants something from the husband, one day just speak how wonderful it would be. Another day say, oh, I have a dream. Another day say, oh, imagine. And so on and so forth, until slowly, slowly cooks in the husband's brain. And then he says, you know what? It's a good idea. And the same thing, if a husband wants to introduce an idea to his wife, he should not just demand it immediately, but he should introduce the idea slowly. That's what Yaakov is teaching us. Now, the plan actually worked, and we're going to see what happened when Esav met Yaakov. We're in verse 23. He got up that night, and he took his 2 wives and 2 handmaids, and his 11 sons, plus Dinah. Dinah is not mentioned here, and the reason is because, as we mentioned last week, Yaakov was afraid that Esav is going to see her and desire to marry her, and therefore he hid her in a box, and he sealed the box that Esav shouldn't lay his eyes on Dinah. So that's why it says only his 11 sons, and cross the shallow part of the river Yabok. He took them and crossed them over the stream, and he sent over his possessions also. Sages say that Yaakov stood in the middle of the river, took his wives, transferred them to the other side, his children, and all the animals single-handedly Yaakov transferred to the other side of the river. And Yaakov was left alone. Very surprising thing we hear. All his family is on the other side of the river, and Yaakov is staying alone on this side of the river. The sages say, why did he go there? Because he forgot some small jars. What are those small jars? In the Midrash says, these are the jars of oil. The small jars of oil. Yaakov is reminding us. Now we're coming close to Hanukkah. Yaakov says, there will come a time when my children will need small jars of oil. And Yaakov risked his life. He went alone and spent night on the other side of the river, rescuing those small jars. And that's the beginning of the miracle of Hanukkah. And what happened? He is alone at night. Our sages say a person should not be alone at night because there are damaging, chas v'shalom, angels at night. If a person is alone, they might attack him spiritually or even physically. If there are two people, that is safer. If a person is forced to sleep alone at night, he should leave a night light on. There should be some light in the room. This will serve as his protection. Yaakov was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. All of a sudden, someone attacks him. Who can attack him? We just said he is alone. In the middle of the night, somebody is wrestling with him. So the sages say, this was no simple man. This was an angel. The angel of Esav. Before we have a physical fight, there is a spiritual fight. Everything that goes on a physical level, there is a spiritual reality that is taking place above. And that is what Yaakov was involved with. Yaakov was involved in a spiritual fight in preparation for the physical fight. They fought the entire night until dawn. What happened at dawn? It says at dawn, this angel had to go back to heaven, to his spiritual world. His time came to sing before Hashem. When he perceived that he could not overcome him, the angel saw the dawn is coming. Dawn also here means the end of days, the end of history, where the struggle that the Jewish people had throughout the dark night of exile is coming to an end. The dawn of Mashiach, the light of redemption is shining. And the angel sees, the angel of Esav, the Malach HaMavet, the Yetzer Hara, sees that the Jewish people are winning. Baruch Hashem, we're still alive and kicking. And he cannot overcome us. So what does he do? He struck the socket of his hip. He cannot kill Yaakov. The Jewish people will stay alive, but he injures Yaakov. The Jewish people become partially injured, disabled. In what part? In their legs, in their hip. The hip is what keeps the person upright, what supports the person. So it says, the sages say, there will be difficulty to support Torah institutions, because Yaakov is Ishtam, Yoshevo Halim. Yaakov represents Torah study, and his hip, the support system, was dislocated, hurt. If you want to raise money for a new venture, start a new business, there's always investors. But if you want to raise money to start a new yeshiva, much harder. Why? Because the angel of Esav saw that what keeps the Jewish people strong is the Torah learning. And if he can damage the support system of Torah learning, he might be able to overcome Yaakov. And so when we are thinking, who should we support with our maaser money? Number one priority is Torah institutions, spreading Torah knowledge among the Jewish people. That's number one, before everything. So the angel of Esav struck Yaakov on his hip, and Yaakov's hip socket was dislocated. Now we're on page 177. So the angel pleaded with Yaakov, let me go, for dawn has broken. And Yaakov said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And the angel said, what's your name? He said, Yaakov. And the angel said, time will come that your name will not be Yaakov anymore, but rather Yisrael, because you fought with the divine and with man, and you overcame. This is the description of Jewish history. We fight spiritual battles and we fight physical battles, and you have overcome. We won. At the end of days, the angels and the nations of the world will admit your name is no longer Yaakov, which means the heel, which means insignificant, the last, at the end. Rather, your name is going to be Yisrael. Comes from the word Sar, minister, prince. Comes from the word Sarita. You fought against God and man. And Yaakov is curious. He says, what's your name? And the angel says, why do you need to know my name? And he blessed him there. So again, our Chachamim say that angels do not have a permanent name, because an angel is created for a mission. His name is his mission. For example, Raphael, his mission is healing. When he's healing, he's called Raphael. Gavriel, his mission is Gevurah, justice. And when he's fulfilling his mission, he is called Gavriel. As soon as the angel fulfills his mission, he goes back to heaven. So this angel says, that's it, I fulfilled my mission. And again, this describes the end of days, when it says that Hashem will shecht Yetzer Hara, when it's no longer needed, when Yaakov, when the Jewish people grow to the next level of Yisrael, when they win all their wars, all their struggles finish, they don't need Yetzer Hara anymore. So he says, I don't have a name anymore. I have to go back to heaven. I have to disappear from this world. May this time come soon in our days. Yaakov called this place Peniel, from the words Penei El, the face of divine. For I have seen the divine face to face, and yet my life was spared. Yaakov realized that this was no simple man, this was an angel. The sun arose as he passed Penuel, and he was limping on his hip. Now you'll notice in verse 32, it says the sun rose for him. What does it mean the sun rose for him? For him alone? And the answer is yes. Remember that when he was running away from Esav 20 years earlier, the sun set for him. Only for him. The sun set earlier so that he shouldn't pass by the place of Beit HaMikdash and he should go to sleep there. So those few hours that the sun set earlier for him, now the sun arose earlier for him in order to heal him. Therefore, the children of Israel are not to eat the displaced sinew, the hip of the hip socket to this day. We call it Gidan Asher, the sciatic nerve. This is a negative commandment that Jewish people are not allowed to eat the part of the thigh and the leg of an animal where sciatic nerve passes. We're not allowed to eat the sciatic nerve itself from the Torah, and we're not allowed to eat the fatty surrounding area around the nerve rabbinically. So we have to either cut out all the endings of the nerve, all the places where the nerve spreads, including all the fat that surrounds the nerve, or if it's too much, we just sell the entire lower part of the animal to a non-Jew. Now we go to chapter 33. Yaakov raised his eyes. Now this is the morning. And he saw, behold, Esav is coming. And with him were 400 men, warriors. So he divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and the two handmaids. Each group of children with their mother, so that their mother should fight for their children. He put the handmaids and their children first, then Leah, and then Rachel and Yosef. And then he himself went out ahead of them and bowed earthward 7 times until he reached his brother. In addition to all the praises that he sent to his brother with the messengers, in addition to all the multiple gifts that he sent to his brother, he is also showing his brother tremendous honor by bowing down earthward all the way till the ground and getting up and bowing down again and getting up and walking a little more and bowing down again, and like this 7 times. And finally, Yaakov's plan worked. Esav ran toward him. What is he going to do now? Yaakov is relying on Hashem. Hashem, protect me. And Esav embraced him. What is he going to do now? Maybe he's going to squeeze my soul out of me. And he fell upon his neck. What is he going to do now with me? Maybe he's going to bite my artery. And he kissed him. And they wept. And the two brothers, after not seeing each other for 20 years, they're crying. And there are 2 interpretations here. If you look in Hebrew, the word Vayishlach has little dots over every letter. When that happens, it's a sign that there is deeper meaning here. What's the deeper meaning? So there's a disagreement between the sages. Some sages say that even though Esav was evil and he hated Yaakov, but something surprising happened here. Hashem inspired him to love Yaakov at this moment. And his tears were sincere. he really kissed him, and he really hugged him, and he really cried. According to another interpretation, Esav was still wicked as earlier. And when he hugged Yaakov, he wanted to choke him. And when he fell upon his neck, he wanted to bite him to death. But Yaakov's neck turned into marble. And Esav's teeth, instead of sinking into his flesh, crumbled on the marble. And Yaakov was crying because he stayed alive. And Esav was crying because his teeth fell out. These are the two interpretations. Now we go to page 179. Esav saw the women and the children. Someone is asking, maybe the tears were sincere. Again, this is an argument of our sages. We don't know. Could be either way, maybe both. Maybe he was sincere, and in the last moment he changed his mind, and he bit him, and then he cried, and through crying he did teshuvah, and he was sincere again. But at the end, Esav didn't marry Dinah. At the end, and that's why Dinah was abducted later. We'll see. But in any case, Esav now says, who are this whole camp? And Yaakov said, these are children whom God has graciously given your servant. And he introduced his handmaids and his wives and his children. And Baruch Hashem, everything was good. Now Esav said, why did you send me so many gifts? You can keep all those gifts. I have plenty. I have so much. And Yaakov said, please take them, because Hashem gave me everything. Here our sages point out to the difference between Esav and Yaakov. Esav says, I have so much. And Yaakov says, I have everything. Because when you say I have so much, means I can have some more. But when you say I have everything, you're satisfied. And Esav offers to travel together with Yaakov. And Yaakov refuses. And he finds an excuse. He says, who knows what this guy has in mind for me? Maybe he's going to kill me on the way. So he says, Esav, no, go ahead. I'm going to slowly walk, and eventually I'm going to catch up with you. So, verse 16, Esav started back that day on his way towards Seir. And Yaakov journeyed to Sukkot. And he built himself a house, and for his livestock he made shelters. Now, verse 18, Yaakov arrived intact at the city of Shechem. By the way, Yaakov is now 99 years old. Verse 19, he bought the parcel of land upon which he pitched his tent from the children of Hamor, Shechem's father, for 100 kesitah. And he set up an altar and proclaimed, God, the God of Israel. So this is one of those few places in the Torah where it says that our forefathers bought land. One was Me'arat Ramachpelah in Hebron, one was Shechem, and one was David HaMelech bought Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, the site of the Holy Temple. And surprisingly, exactly those three places that the Torah says openly that Jewish people bought with money, the non-Jews are arguing that those three places belong to them. Shechem, the site of Yosef's burial, now is in the hands of Arabs. Hebron, the site of the burial place of our forefathers, is in the hands of Arabs. And Yerushalayim, the site of the Temple Mount, is in the hands of Arabs. And we have proof in the Torah. 3 times the Jewish people bought land with money, with document. Okay, now we go to chapter 34, the unfortunate story of Dinah. Yaakov tried to hide his daughter from Esav. And Hashem said, you're not giving her to Esav. Instead, she's going to be taken by someone else. Dinah went out to look over the daughters of the land. And Shechem, son of Hamor, the prince of the region, saw her, took her, lay with her, and violated her. And he became deeply attached, and he loved her. And he tried to appeal to her emotions. And he said to his father, take me her as a wife. Yaakov heard what happened, and he kept silent until his children arrived. Hamor and Shechem came to Yaakov and said, please let us marry your daughter. When Yaakov's children heard that, they were very distressed and were fired deeply with indignation. We're now on page 183. Hamor spoke to them saying, Shechem, my son, longs deeply for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife. Verse 13, Yaakov's sons answered Shechem cleverly, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to a man who is uncircumcised. Verse 15, only on this condition we will acquiesce to you if you become like us, letting every male among you become circumcised. Verse 18, Hamor agrees. Their proposal seemed good in the view of Hamor and in the view of Shechem. And they convinced the entire city to undergo circumcision. Now, we're on page 185, verse 24. All the males, all those who depart through the gate of the city were circumcised. The entire city of Shechem gets circumcision. Now, verse 25, and it came to pass on the third day, when they were in pain, the two sons of Yaakov, Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, they each took his sword, and they came upon the city confidently and killed every male. And they killed Hamor and Shechem as well. And they took Dinah and left. Verse 30, Yaakov said to Shimon and Levi, you have caused my reputation to be bad in the eyes of the inhabitants of the land. They might get together and attack me. And in fact, that's what happened. Discard the alien gods. Can everyone hear me? I hope so. Discard the alien gods that are in your midst. Cleanse yourself and change your clothes, which means throw out all the idols that you may have gathered from the nations that we were attacked by, and we won, and we took their possessions. And among their possessions were some idols. Throw them away and cleanse yourselves and your clothing. Verse 4, so they gave to Yaakov all the alien gods that were in their possessions. And Yaakov buried them underneath a tree. Some say it was a cashew tree near Shechem. And they set out. And there fell a godly terror on the cities which were around them, so that they did not pursue sons of Yaakov. Thus, Yaakov came to Luz, which is called Beit El. Verse 7, and he built an altar there. Now, verse 8, Devorah, the nurse of Rivka, died. And our sages say that at the same time that she died, Rivka died as well. the Torah is hinting to us that Rivka died. The Torah is not saying openly that Rivka died, because the family was worried that they cannot even make a public burial for Rivka, because the nations hated Esav at that time so much, because Esav did so much trouble, that they might chas v'shalom curse Rivka as the mother of such an evil person. So the Torah doesn't even mention Rivka's death to hide it from people. Now we go to page 189. God appeared to Yaakov again, and he blessed him. And God said to him, your name until now was Yaakov. Your name shall not always be called Yaakov, but Yisrael shall be your name. And he blessed him and said, I am El Shaddai. That's one of the names of God. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and congregation of nations shall descend from you. Kings will issue from your loins. And the land that I gave to Abraham and Yitzchak, I will give to you and to your offspring. Yaakov set up an altar. He poured the libation upon it and poured oil upon it. Through this, Yaakov fulfilled his promise that he made when he was traveling towards Lavan. Remember, after he woke up, he took the stone that was under his head, he put it as a monument, he poured oil on it, and he said, when I come back safely, I will serve God on this place. And that's what he's doing now. Now, verse 16, the birth of Binyamin and death of Rachel. Rachel went into labor and had difficulty in her childbirth. And the midwife said to her, have no fear, for this one too is a son for you. And as she was dying, she called him Ben Oni, which means the son of my sorrow, my pain. But his father refused to give him a name with bad connotation, and he called him Binyamin, which either means the son of my strength, or the son of my old age, or the son of the south, because the land of Israel is south of Iran and Iraq, where the rest of the children were born, and Syria. So Binyamin is the only son that was born in the land of Israel. That is why he is called the son of the south. Thus Rachel died and was buried on the road to Ephrat, which is Bethlehem. And Yaakov set up a monument over her grave. It is the monument of Rachel's grave until today. Now we're on page 191. So we see that Yaakov lost his mother and his wife at the same time. Verse 21, Israel journeyed on and pitched his tent beyond Migdal Eder. And it came to pass, while Israel dwelt in that land, that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah, his father's concubine, and Israel heard. Our sages say that this is not to be taken literally. In fact, Reuben did not make such a terrible mistake, but rather Reuben just moved the bed of Yaakov from the tent of Bilhah into the tent of his own mother Leah. Because Reuben said, until now, Yaakov loved Rachel. Now that Rachel passed away, I expect my father to love Leah. Why is my father moving his bed into the tent of Bilhah? And the answer was simple, because Bilhah is maidservant of Rachel. Yaakov was trying to console himself and attach himself to somebody who was connected to Rachel. But Reuben stood up for his mother and carried the bed of Yaakov into Leah's tent. But that was wrong. No one is allowed to interfere in a relationship between a husband and wife. And whoever does, this is considered adultery. Even though he did not commit adultery. But because he interfered with Yaakov's personal marital life, it is considered on his great level as if he committed adultery. The sons of Yaakov were 12. And now we list all of them. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zevulon, Yosef, Binyamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, and Asher. These are the 12 tribes. Verse 27, Yaakov came to Yitzchak, his father, in Hebron. And now Torah tells us that Torah jumps forward. Yitzchak's days were 180 years, and Yitzchak expired, even though it's going to happen much later. But the Torah already tells us that Yitzchak dies, and he was gathered to his people, old and fulfilled in days, and his sons, Esau and Yaakov, buried him. Now, in page 193, verse chapter 36, these are the descendants of Esav. He is Edom. He had 3 wives, Ada, Aholivamah, and Basmat, and they gave him they gave birth to many children. Esav, now on page 8, verse 8, Esav settled in Mount Seir. And in verse 12, Timnah, a concubine of Eliphaz, Esav's son, bore him Amalek. So we see that Amalek is the son of Eliphaz, grandson of Esav. Now, our sages say that really Esav had an adulterous relationship with Timnah, his own son's wife, and he bore Amalek. So Amalek was a mamzer. Eliphaz himself was a mamzer, and Amalek is a mamzer squared. And Amalek is the eternal enemy of the Jewish people. Now we turn to page 195. Now it lists the chiefs, the 14 chiefs of Esav, and then it gives us in verse 20 the genealogy of Seir. And in verse 29, it gives us the 7 chiefs of the Horites. Now we go to page 197. These are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom. Here, 8 kings of Edom, of Esav, are listed. And then in verse 40, 11 chiefs of Esav are listed. It's a good question. Why 8 kings? And why list them by name? And here, secrets are contained. The names, you'll see they're strange names, and a lot of information is encoded in these names. With this, the Parsha finishes. Thank you for joining us. Have a good night. Shabbat Shalom. All the best.